What a subject we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the insanity, in my opinion, the insanity of the rules and regulations that a foreigner in the Philippines would have to go through in order to hire people to work on his job. Okay, so I'm gonna set some examples of what I consider complete insanity, and if anybody wants to disagree, by all means, do so, but post something that makes sense to the foreigner's point of view, not to the Filipinos' point of view. So I'm going to talk about a job I watched happen yesterday on the property line of my property, which was fine for me, but at looking at it from an outside perspective, the Filipinos that were hired to do a job did a completely different job and expanded the job beyond the boundaries of what the original job was for with no reason, and actually made what they were supposed to make better worse. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So as far as hiring Filipinos are concerned, I was asked that question yesterday. First of all, it's a trick question. As far as I'm concerned, Ed Lippett, who asked me that question, it was a trick question, or a question that would entrap me somehow. And either he did it out of complete stupidity, or he did it to entrap me, or he did it because he just doesn't know what the hell is going on in the Philippines. But he did ask me a question that would entrap me with the Philippines Labor Bureau. And I don't appreciate stupidity or entrapment. So, Ed, it would be good if you just didn't come on my channel anymore, because you have lived here in the Philippines long enough to know the answer to the question that you asked me. So either you tried to entrap me, or your question is just completely stupid, which moves over to you asked a stupid question for some stupid reason. So let's just be clear on that. Please, just do me a favor and don't come to my channel anymore. I don't need to be encouraged into being entrapped by the Philippines Labor Bureau, and you already know the answer to the question. So don't do it. Just stay away from my channel. The fact that you like the other guy's channel, just stay on his channel. Okay, we already know who I'm talking about. And nobody is going to advance other people's channels on my channel anymore. If everybody in the Philippines vlogging genre doesn't want anybody to enhance someone else's channel, just stay off my channel. Okay? I don't want to see you on my channel and the other guy's channel. I don't really care whose channel you go to watch. But when you start making comments and complimenting the other guy because somehow you were both in the service, big deal. Does that mean that the other guy that you compliment and comment on his page, does that mean he's a good person? He's an absolute troll. So stay off my channel if you want to promote somebody else's channel. Just promote their channel on someone else's channel. Thanks. So and unfortunately Jerry Cantrell got caught up in that as well. And my friend Scott Del Fuego removed Jerry Cantrell's comment because it didn't belong on my page. We don't give accolades to trolls' channels. Hey, Scott, thank you very much. And my friend Scott Del Fuego, he removed the comments because it's a left-handed compliment at best, or it's a smack in the face at worst. And Scott sees through this stuff. Good morning. Well, good evening, Scott. So I don't need to listen to a comment that's basically entrapment. I could have said this to Ed yesterday, but I really wanted to get on to my other topics. But today's topic is real. And the way today's topic is real is because I'm going to give you firm and truthful examples of what it would be like for a foreigner to try to hire a Filipino labor in the Philippines. Not in America, but in the Philippines. Now, as a caveat, I will tell you that my brother has a crew working under him for several years now that is 100% Filipino. And he is 100% sure that the Filipino crew he has working for him in America is by far the best, most courteous, and most efficient crew in the environment that he works in. And they're honest. Okay, so we're not talking about Filipinos that are being hired in America as American labor, or crews that the Filipinos go out by themselves as a crew, but my brother was in charge of the crew. No, he is 100%, him and I have been talking about this for years. They're the best crew in the entire environment that he works in. So moving on, what it's like to hire a Filipino in the Philippines is a nightmare as far as foreigners are concerned for several reasons. Number one, when I went to hire a contractor and to get a bid on my job, I brought him the plans. And when I gave him the plans, let's just say I gave him the plans on the 1st of the month. And he bid, at that time, 12,000 pesos per square meter. So, and he reviewed the plans at 12,000 pesos per square meter in his office, at his desk, with me, with the plans on the desk, with all the stamps and all the inspectors' signatures on the plans. And he bid 12,000 pesos per square meter to build the hotel at the width and at the depth and with the amount of kitchens and bathrooms on the plans, using medium-priced cabinets and using medium-priced fixtures in the bathroom and the kitchen. 12,000 pesos per square meter. Then when I told him I was ready to start, he said, well, let me hold the plans. Let me hold the plans. Let me just make sure of everything that needs to be done. So this is where it begins with dealing with Filipinos as far as contracts are concerned and as far as agreements are concerned. So I let him hold the plans, and I went back. He said, give me 3 weeks. That's okay. It takes a while to review the prices of fixtures and so on and so forth. I went back a month later, 5 weeks later, actually, and the price went from 12,000 pesos per square meter, which is $250 per square meter, to 18,000 pesos per square meter, which is $360 per square meter. So it went from $250 to $360, but per square meter no longer included any fixtures for the bathroom, and it did not include the kitchen cabinets. And here's the problem. This guy is a builder. He's not only is he a builder, but this is what he does for a living. So he showed me the plans that he just finished building in Bohol. And he built with fixtures and kitchen cabinets in that time frame that I had the plans on his desk. He built the entire concrete structure, concrete floor, concrete walls, concrete ceiling. He built it for 12,000 pesos per square meter. So he was in the process of building a building for 12,000 pesos per square meter, and I was in the process of hiring him. So how in 5 weeks does a job increase by 50% and 50% and plus the fixtures, which I would have to personally buy? In other words, he would not be responsible for the fixtures purchase, but he was also not going to be responsible for any damages done to the fixtures upon the installation of the fixtures. In other words, if someone dropped a toilet bowl and it was like $200 for a toilet bowl, he wasn't going to be responsible for that. Well, he's the contractor. Of course he should be responsible for that. That's what he's bidding on. But so that went out the window. So I did not hire him. But more than that, this is the rules. Okay, so had I hired him to do this job, number one, I told him from the get-go, I want to be on the job and I want to be able to tell the men what to do. He did not say that was not possible. Okay, but when I came back 5 weeks later and he gave me a price of 50% more plus the fixtures, I said, well, will the men listen to what I tell them to do and how I tell them to do it? And that includes what tools to use to cut the scaffold pipe, what tools to use to cut the wood, and what tools to use to cut the plywood. And he said, no, you will not be allowed on the job. So the conversation ended. I mean, it was 3 seconds after he said that, I said to him, are you serious? He goes, no, you won't be allowed on the job. I says, okay, roll up the plans. He goes, are we going to do, no, we're not doing anything. Just give me back the plans. You just wasted 6 hours of my time, plus I took you and your secretaries out to dinner when I was supposed to be taking you and your wife. I took you and your 3 secretaries, and then I paid for everything, and you left them a $1 tip. We're done. You and I are done. Our business association in the past, it's like it never happened, and we will never have business in the future. I offered him and his wife to go out for dinner. This is what a Filipino agreement is. Him and his wife to come out for dinner with Daisy and I at the time. And his wife was supposed to come out to dinner with us. I was in his office and he said, okay, we'll meet you at 5 o'clock at, I forgot the name of the restaurant, but it's right as you leave Tagbilaran City, right before you go down the hill on the left-hand side. There's a high-end restaurant, something carriage restaurant. It's got a giant white horse with a carriage. It's actually a carriage and a white statue of a horse in front of it. It's supposed to be some high-end restaurant. So I told him I was going to take him and his wife out to that restaurant. Well, at 5 o'clock, we were standing a few meters away from the restaurant, and we get a message. No, excuse me. We were in the BQ Mall grocery shopping, and we get a message saying that we're going to change the restaurant to a restaurant in the BQ Mall, which was okay because that's where we were. And we were just about ready to go to the restaurant to meet him and his wife. When I get to the top floor of the BQ Mall, we go into this restaurant. No one was in there. because the food was junk. But that's not the point. And he had his three secretaries with him, not his wife. Well, I agreed to take him and his wife out. I didn't agree to take him and his. And he goes, well, I guess it's okay that I brought my secretaries. I said, yeah, it's okay. I'm thinking he's going to pay for his secretaries. Why should I pay for his secretaries? He didn't keep his agreement with him and his wife. And that was the agreement. And that agreement was made weeks before. He didn't agree to he didn't tell me he was going to bring his three secretaries. So they ordered the most expensive stuff on the menu and multiple drinks. And the bottom line is that the bill was about $64, 3,200 pesos. And when the bill came, they put it on the table. He went to the bathroom. So I figured he was going to pay for his secretaries. And he stayed in the men's room for more than 20 minutes, hiding from the bill. So the restaurant was empty when we walked in, and it was empty when we were done eating. The girls wanted to close up shop by 8:30. So I paid the bill and told him, and as soon as I paid the bill, somehow he knew I paid the bill. He came out of the bathroom. And I said, I just paid the bill. Are you going to kick in for your secretaries? He goes, oh, no, you were taking me out for dinner. Now, he wasn't even shy about this. So basically, I agreed to take him and his wife out for dinner, and he brought 2 extra people. But he didn't want to pay for any of their meals. And they bought the most expensive stuff on the menu, and they bought extra drinks and desserts and whatnot. Okay, so it was $64 for the meal. I paid that. I said to him, okay, at least leave the tip. You know what he left them for a tip? He took 50 pesos out of his pocket and he put it on the table. I said, what's that? He goes, that's the tip. I said, the bill was 3,200 pesos. He goes, we don't tip in the Philippines. So I said to the girl, that's from him, the tip. That's not from me. And I wouldn't give them any more. So basically the tip should have been, a decent tip would have been 500 pesos, 450 pesos. He left 1/10 of what the tip should be. But he's charging me, when I go back to his business, 50% more, top dollar plus fixtures. This is standard business in the Philippines. So when I said to him, will the Filipino men listen at least to how I tell them to do the job? In other words, if I already own a skill saw, but if I buy a palomite to cut the rebar and a palomite to cut the pipe, will they do as I explained to them to do, to cut the rebar and the pipe? And the answer was no, they won't. And you're not allowed on the job. So at that point, I told them to roll up the plans and give me back the plans. And he said, well, are we going to start the job? I said, no, we're not going to start the job. And he said, well, when are we going to start? I said, we're not going to start. It's not going to happen. If I can't be in control of a job, of Filipino labor, which is basically labor with no formal education, and they're going to cut the pipe by hand with a hacksaw, and they're going to cut the plywood by hand with a handsaw, and they're going to cut whatever they're going to cut by hand, and they're going to chisel with a hammer and nail. What I have a power chisel, or electric and air chisels to do. I want no part of hiring a Filipino crew. So when I do decide to build, I'll actually build the hotel myself, by myself, if I have to. And that's the way I'll do it. But you have to understand, when you come to the Philippines, they're not going to follow your lead. I have 38 years in the construction industry. I have the equipment, the power miter to cut the steel, rebar, and the pipes. They're going to cut the power. They're going to cut the hand. They're going to cut the rebar and the pipe by hand. Now, if you think I'm kidding, take a look at the screenshot of my thumbnail and blow it up. And look at the angles of the pipe. They're all cut by hand, and they're not cut square, and they're cut with a hacksaw. And this is a Honda motorcycle dealership. So millions and millions of pesos were spent to do the building of the Honda motorcycle dealership. And yet, hand tools were used to cut the pipe, the rebar, and hand saws to cut the plywood. There were no power tools on the job at all. The only power tools that were on the job at all was a cement mixer. So the option for me to hire Filipinos is just not going to happen. I can do more work with my power tools and my equipment than any 3 and possibly 4 or 5 Filipinos can do in any given day. Will they use a nail gun to put the forms together? No, they won't. Will they use a chop saw with a carborundum blade on to cut the pipe? No, they won't. Will they use a carborundum blade to cut the rebar? No, they will not. Will they use a hand saw to cut the forms? No, they will not. And to complicate matters worse, putting the pipe together. See this bracket here? These are pipe brackets, okay? And or for scaffolding, okay? Now these are painted to protect them from the weather. If I didn't protect this has been up on the roof for about a month. I just found this one a couple of days ago up on the roof. Had I not protected this with yellow paint, it would be rusted. It would be rusted. The whole thing would be rusted. So I don't paint them with a brush. I just dip them in a bucket of paint that's thinned out 15%. And whatever it stays on, it stays on. But this did not rust in 3 months up on top of the roof. The threads didn't rust and the nut didn't rust. However, if the Filipinos were to put pipe together, they would be using a wrench, trying to turn this nut with a wrench. 1 loop, 1/4 turn at a time. It could take them a minute or 2 minutes. It could take, hey, Jerry Cantrell, thank you for stopping by, and thanks for understanding about trying to promote other people's channels. We don't do that on my channel, Jerry, and it wasn't anything personal, but we just don't promote, especially that person that you mentioned yesterday. So thanks for not being upset. I did see that. I have no wish, want, will, or desire to make you upset, but we don't promote that particular channel or many other channels on my channel. So thanks for understanding, and thank you for stopping back. Mickey Mason, primitive construction, it goes beyond that. It goes to the level of arrogance. Because this tool here, this is an air tool. It's called a paddle ratchet, and it's for head bolts, and it's actually for taking motors apart. When you have a lot of bolts with fine threads, and you don't want to turn a ratchet. Now you don't break the bolts with this. You don't, like if you have a head bolt, a 5/8 head bolt, and you have 160 psi pounds, 160 pounds of torque on a head bolt, this tool will not release the head bolt from the head. What you'll need is an 18-inch breaker bar with this socket on it You break the bolt just a quarter of a turn, then you put this tool on and you press this paddle like this. Off, on, off, on. Okay? So off, on, off, on. And you just push this lever down, and in 1.5 seconds, 1.25 inches of threads will come out of the head bolt, fine threads, which would take you minutes to do with a ratchet in a tight spot. Maybe more, maybe less. But either way, this reduces the time to about 2 seconds to remove a head bolt from 2 or 3 minutes. And the same thing happens when you put this paddle ratchet on a pipe clamp. It would take about 1 second to ratchet that nut all the way down to the bottom of the pipe clamp, which would be about here somewhere. It would take about 1 second. And when you're going to take it off, you just push this paddle down, and it will take about 1 second to release the nut so that you can, once you release it far enough, you can take the nut out and you hinge it out like that. So 1 second as opposed to a minute plus per nut, per pipe clamp. And look at the thumbnail with all of those clamps. And every one of them were done with a hand wrench. Every clamp was done with a hand wrench. Every cut on the pipe was done with a hacksaw. And most of the times the hacksaw blade is dull. So it could take 4 or 5 minutes to cut one piece of pipe, one cut. And it won't even be a straight cut. Not only that, but those 4 or 5 minutes, then you have a burr, a big burr on the pipe, inside and outside the pipe, that you can cut your hand on. If you cut it with a power miter, the chances of getting a burr are good, but you can clean the burr off with not with a rat tail file, but with a half moon file inside and out in about 45 seconds. But if you do it with a hacksaw, it's 3 times as much burr. So it could take a few minutes to take the burr off, or 2 minutes, okay? So when you tell a Filipino to use a tool like this, now this happens to be an air tool. So this, you just hook up your air hose. They didn't even have a compressor on that job, the Honda dealership. So when you tell a Filipino to use this tool, they won't have an air tools. But that's not stopping them from using a tool. They make electric ratchets like this for about $60. You can buy an electric ratchet. So you can use an electric ratchet and put the socket on there, and you can still have the ability to put the nut on and off in 2 seconds. They won't use an electric ratchet. They don't have an electric ratchet on the job. If you put an electric ratchet on the job, as the contractor stated, they won't listen to your instructions. They'll do it by hand. Now, don't believe me? I've used this example before. On the hotel next door to me, they put a power miter on the job to cut several hundred pieces of wood to build the kitchen countertops. Now the man who built the countertops did not use the power miter. Not plugged in. He did use the power miter. What he did sometimes, if the power miter was where he was working, is sometimes he would put the 2x2 or 2x4 on the table of the power miter and then cut the wood by hand. And if it fit, it fit. And if it didn't fit, he'd try to shave off a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch by hand. which sometimes would take 10 or 15 minutes to make one cut. The dogs are going wild out there. We have a lot of wild dogs out here. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the dogs go nuts. Anyway, he would use the power miter, not plugged in, and sometimes he would put the wood on the power miter as a table. But sometimes he would put the wood over his knee. And sometimes he would put the wood over a whatever, a chair. And that's how he built the countertops. And he did a damn fine job considering he did everything by hand. That's not the point. I can cut 1,000 perfect 45-degree angles with a power miter in a few hours, where it would take him a month to do that. So basically you're looking at 20 to 30 to 40 or 50 times the amount of time to do something. If this takes 2 seconds to use, 2 seconds off, move the clamp 2 seconds on, and it takes you 4 minutes to do it by hand. 4 times 60 is 240. The 4 seconds divided into 240 is 60. 60 times the amount of time to do it by hand as this tool does it, or an electric tool does it. 60 times the time factor. So when I say I'm going to build the hotel by myself, I'm still going to be saving time at the end of the day than to have a man cut one sheet of... Next time I go into the city, I was in the city 2 weeks ago. I mentioned this, but I mentioned it in passing. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was in the city. There was a curb, and the curb is about 8 inches high. There was a man nailing on a piece of plywood over the curb, cutting a piece of plywood, but with a handsaw. Now, the handsaw was dull, and it had no set. It was also rusty, so it kept jamming up. That did not deter him from spending however much time it took. I would estimate 20 minutes to cut the piece of plywood lengthwise. And he was doing that to put that piece on a tricycle for a customer. So here is a hardware store right across the street from BQ Mall, a regular hardware store that sells plywood, cutting a piece of 3/4 inch form wood with a handsaw that took about 20 minutes to cut. And if you were to give them, it's a hardware store. They sell skill saws in the hardware store, and the hardware store is attached to the warehouse next door. But they cut the plywood by hand. So now you have a customer with a tricycle that's getting paid for waiting time, waiting 20 plus minutes. Okay, so I lost most of the viewers. So what happened was what we had was what the globe, the high tech industry of the Philippines internet, we had a glitch in the system. For a millisecond, the system was shut off and turned back on for whatever reason. It happens several times a day that my modem just goes from 7 lights to no lights. And it happens a lot. It wasn't a blackout. We didn't have a blackout, an electrical blackout. We had an internet blackout for even just 1 millisecond, and the modem has to reevaluate the codes and let you back on. So what I'm trying to say is about the hiring Filipinos, it's just, I'm going to give you like 5 examples, and then I'm going to actually go outside and do some work up on the roof. But don't expect to come here. Now, this is the second part of my dissertation on what it's like to hire Filipinos. Because now I'm going to tell you about the blowback that you're going to get from Filipinos that you hire to do a job, if in fact that happens. So it's not going to happen with me. So I'm going to give you an example from the hotel next door. So the hotel next door is owned by a friend of mine who's married to a Filipino who has never had anything to do with working on the job. Okay? Even though he's married to a Filipina and he's a Filipino citizen legally, a dual citizen, he very rarely would he ever even come to the job, and even less rarely would he tell anybody what to do. He let his wife, a Filipina, tell everybody what to do. He might explain it to her, what he wants done, but he very rarely interacted with the Filipinos. And the reason is because the Filipinos simply won't listen to him. Now, I've said this story before. I'm not going to change the tune of this story. So the owner of the resort next door is, in fact, a Filipino woman, 60%. And the foreigner is a foreigner, 40% owner. He would very rarely ever tell any of the men what to do, because there was a reason for that. They simply won't listen. They will not follow his lead or his instructions. They won't do it. It doesn't matter that he is the person supplying the money. He's the person that supplied the money to buy the property. He's the person that supplied the materials to do the job. They simply don't listen to him. They do it their way. And their way, after he put the power miter on the job, was to sometimes use the power miter as a bench to cut the wood with a handsaw. Their way was to cut the plywood with a handsaw when he put a skill saw and electric on the job. And he did not push the issue to use the power miter or the hands or the skill saw. Because when he told them what to do, in the rare instance, because I lived there, remember now, I lived there for 3.5 years. And I was living there with Daisy. Daisy, if she was ever to be asked, would confirm what I am saying is true. But I have actually watched him tell a man to go downstairs and empty a truck that pulled up loaded with supplies that had to go from the ground floor to the third floor where they were working. And the man was tying wire by hand. And he said to the man, using his name, go downstairs and help them, the other men, unload the truck and bring it up to the third floor. And he kept tying wire. And I'm looking at the owner, and I'm looking at the guy, and the guy is only a few feet from him. He heard him. So the owner said, go downstairs and help the men. And he turned around and said, I'm tying wire. When I'm done tying wire, I'll go downstairs and help the men. Really? So he wasn't going to be done tying wire for a month. He was tying beam boxes. So, in other words, he wasn't going to go downstairs. So he completely disrespected the actual supplier of money, materials, and the job. He just said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he did not go downstairs and help the other men. So I said to him, maybe it's time to get somebody else that listens? He goes, oh no. He goes, if I let him go, maybe the other men will slow down or quit. And I said, yes, so? You hire 5 men that listen to you. Oh, it's not so easy. Okay, so if that's the example I have to go by, to hire men that will not listen to instructions, even though I'm supplying the money, the materials, and the job itself for them to feed their family, and they're still not going to follow instructions. I just build the hotel by myself and not get any So you want to tell them what to do, and they say no, and you let them go, and you have to worry about the other people quitting? It's not like you let him go for some insignificant thing. He directly disobeyed the owner of the job. Well, apparently you're not allowed to do that. I don't know. I have never tried it. But if I did try it, it would only happen one time. I would not let... In my world, in America, I tell people what to do, and they do it, or I ask them how many hours they worked this week, and they tell me how many hours they got in, and I pay them, and they go find another job where they could be the boss. But here, it's not like that. Don't expect it to be like that. And again, I could give you example after example. If you really want an example of how Filipinos work, go to my home page and look at the video for returning subscribers of how they chiseled out the notches for the fence with a nail put through a piece of plastic pipe and a hammer. And it might take them an hour to make each notch, maybe 2 hours. And they made hundreds of notches like that. Whereas if they had an electric hammer, this is a government job now, by the way. This is not a private job. This was a government job. To prove that, well, I made a video showing the end result of that fence. I can't put that up on YouTube. You wouldn't believe. You might believe it, but you would not believe I made a video of the finished product of that fence. The word ludicrous and construction come to mind. The word incompetence, the word ignorance and construction come to mind when you see the end result of that fence. And I don't think I'll put it up on YouTube because it is so far beyond the pale. Although I could show you the end result of that fence. If you just want to wait a minute, I do have the end result of that fence, but you won't believe it. I'm gonna go to the end result of that fence that's on my home page. You're not going to believe how that fence ended up painted and the finished product of the fence. You would say, no. If I tell you what the finished product looks like, you won't believe it. You won't believe it, but I'm gonna show it to you. How to start a small business from scratch. Dental office. I do not have that video loaded. And I don't have it loaded because my 74,000 peso cell phone is not communicating with my computer, and I can't figure out why, and neither can Andrew Steinmetz Blue Rose. We tried that yesterday. In fact, that's why we tried it, so that I could get that video loaded. I could try to upload a video now from my Galaxy 21 phone. So now this Galaxy 21 phone, it didn't get wet, not in the last 6 months or so, but it's not communicating with the computer. We tried Bluetooth, is not interacting with the computer, and also the wire, the hard wire, is not communicating with the phone. But anyway, let me describe how the fence ended up. Okay, so you all saw. Now, I could have saved. There were 60 sections of fence, so that was four notches per, what's there, 60 sections? By the time it's done, there'll be 60 sections. No, 50 sections. So 50 times 4 at a minimum an hour of a piece. That's, say, 250 hours to chisel out those notches. 250 plus hours. That's a reasonable amount of time. You saw the job. You saw how long it takes to chisel. So figure an hour per notch times 50 times 4. That's 250 hours. If I was building those columns, I would have put 250 pieces of styrofoam where the notches go. Then when you pull the forms off, you could just take, you could take a hammer and a wood chisel and just chisel it out in a minute or two per piece. Or if you really wanted to get fancy, you could take a torch, a hand torch, and just burn the styrofoam right out. It would disappear in seconds. But no, they chiseled it with a hammer and nail at 250 hours. Now, the thing that I really wanted to show you, and I tried to get this video loaded yesterday, and I'm going to see if I can open it up now, is the finished product of the fence. You won't believe it. You won't believe it. And I'm going to try it one more time. And no, I can't get, the phone is not communicating with the camera. I'll have to do this another day. Anyway, so I could have saved on the fence railing part of that job. If I was in charge of the job, 250 hours of chiseling for 2 men for 3 weeks to chisel out the notches. Could have been more, for all I know. I don't know. I'm just taking a guess at 1 hour per notch. Okay, so I could have saved 250 hours for them to chisel out the notches. Now, all the fences were stacked one on top of each other. So they were stacked, one on top of one another. Did they paint the fences while they were all stacked on top of one another so that you could just roll it on, and then use a brush, and then flip the fence over, then roll the other side, and then use a brush to get into all the cracks and corners of the fence? Did they do it like that? No, they did not. They welded the fence in place in between the columns. But it gets better. It gets better. I can't even show you the pictures of it. Man, am I upset about this. So now you have 50 fences with maybe each fence has 30 pipes, but they're 4 inches apart, so it's 10 feet, maybe 40 pipes per fence. So they put the fence in between the columns, and then they welded it in by using anything they could to attach it to the rebar that was in the columns. And they did a nice job. It's all level, it's all straight, it's all vertical. But the bottoms of the pipes touched the cement block because they used the cement block that was level as a guide. I'm not real sure. I wasn't there. So they brought the pipe down to the cement block. And this is going to be in a video that I may or may not load. So now the pipes are a ½ inch away from the cement block. Did they paint it yet? Nope, they didn't paint it yet. Then they took, and I have the video of where there is stucco and where there isn't stucco. So now the fence is down a half inch or 3/8 of an inch away from the top of the block, and then they took stucco and they stuccoed over the top of the block onto the metal that's not painted up about an inch. So they brought 1.25 inches of mud on top of the cement block of unpainted rebar. Does anybody understand what I just said? The pipes are hollow. They didn't paint it when it was horizontal. They didn't paint it when they put it up and they welded it in place. They didn't paint it before they put the stucco up 1.25 inches. Then they put the stucco up 1.25 inches and worked the stucco around the bottom of each bar. Hundreds, thousands of minutes extra to get the stucco smooth around each bar. So they basically encased the bottom of each bar in 1.25 inches of stucco. And the bars, remember, are hollow. So when it rains, the bars will fill up with water. And it will have no place to go because the stucco will hold the water in the pipe. So it will rust from the inside and outside of the bottom of the pipe. So in a few years, if I were to go back and make a video 5-6 years from now, all the bottoms of all the pipes of all the fence will be rotted out because the pipes are going to fill up with water, have no place for it to go, and it's going to rust from the inside out. Then, after they put the stucco up about this high, then they primed the pipes, the square tubing, with a primer. But they didn't go down to the pipe. They did not go down to the stucco with the primer. They only went to about a ½ inch higher than the stucco because they didn't want to get primer on the stucco. Well, that means, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means they're not going to paint primer on the pipe to the stucco, or they're going to finish the stucco job and then paint down to the stucco. Either way, where the stucco meets the pipe, it's going to rust out. It gets better. It gets better. The job is a government job, which means there was a government engineer that designed the fence and the stucco and the height of the stucco. And the fact that they didn't paint all of these railings when they had them in one pile in a few hours to paint. 2 men could have painted all 50 railings in a day or a day and a half and got all the ends and all the corners and everything real simple. No, it took them weeks to paint the railings, a couple of men. Weeks instead of a few hours, a day, 2 days. Me and another guy, let's just go one step further. 2 laborers to move the railings, and me and another guy rolling and painting with a brush. 50 pieces, 5 minutes to a piece, 250. We could have did it in a day. 4 men could have did it in 1 day. This way it took a month, close to a month for them to do it. So, is there anything wrong with the way they did it? Not according to the engineer. If there was a foreman, not according to the foreman. Not according to the guy who was in charge of the job, the superintendent. Not according to the architect. Not according to the person who hired them. It was a perfect job. But for me, I could have saved 250 hours on chipping, 400 hours on painting. That's 600 hours. I would have never encased the bottom of the pipes in stucco, where it makes it almost impossible to match the brush up to the stucco without getting paint on the stucco. I would have saved 1,000 hours of labor. And you would have got a better job, and the bottoms of the pipes would not be encased in stucco. I've been a contractor for 38 years, a license. I have never seen anybody encase hollow pipes into a stucco fence, ever. I've never seen it done. If you asked an architect, should it be done? Would be no, the answer. And are they going to cover the top of every pipe with an ornament? Maybe. But it still has water in it from the rain that already rained. So maybe they'll put an ornamental piece on the top of every pipe. And whatever rain is in the pipe will stay there forever, oxidizing, evaporating, rusting, oxidizing, evaporating, falling back down. But either way, that fence has a lifespan at the bottom of the fence. What could have been 20 or 25 years, maybe it has a lifespan of 5 or 6 years. And the bottom of the fence will rot out. They'll cut all the bottoms off, and they'll paint it, and they'll fill up all the stucco holes where the paint went, and all the rust that rusts over the stucco and over the paint. When it rusts, the rust is going to bleed. The rust is going to go outside the perimeter of the pipe. It's going to roll down the face of the concrete, and if there's paint on the concrete, then it'll roll down the face of the paint, and they'll have to paint it every year, otherwise they'll see rust streaks down it. I wish I could show it to you, but I can't get my camera to communicate with my computer. So that's a government job with a government engineer, with a government architect, and a government hired supervisor and a government crew doing the job. And easily anybody that was in charge of a job that knew what they were doing could save a minimum of 1,000 hours on just that one item, the fence, the installation of the fence. 1,000 hours? Okay, it doesn't amount to much in Philippines money, but the fact, take into account that in a few years you're going to have to cut all the bottoms of the fence off, rip the metal out of the stucco, and then then fill up the stucco, and you're going to have to paint it. So you're talking about several thousand hours and a nicer job if someone was just paying attention to how it should be done. And that just doesn't happen here. If it goes together wrong, it's okay. We'll just redo it again, and you'll pay for us to redo it. That's the way it is here. I've been on jobs where my friend built 16 rooms, and they put the water bottle 125 feet away from the job. So every time someone wanted water, they'd walk down one flight of stairs, they'd walk 125 feet to the water bottle, they'd have a glass of water, they'd walk 125 feet back, and then they'd go back upstairs. And Daisy and I were looking at the guys walking across the yard while we were talking to my friend Mai, and Daisy said, why don't they put the water bottle upstairs where they're working? But we already had the answer for that. The men, when Mai told them, the Mai is a Filipino, the contractor on the job. He's the owner of the property, the owner of the building, and he was in charge of construction on the job. He was not the licensed contractor. He had hired a big firm to do it. But when he asked them, why don't you put the water bottle on the second floor? They said, no, we put the water bottle where our foods are, our food table. So they have multiple water bottles, but they'd rather walk down a flight of stairs, 125 feet, 125 feet back, and then upstairs. 7 minutes to get a glass of water. That's the Filipino way. So if you come here, if you were to tell them to put the water bottle upstairs, they wouldn't. If you put the water bottle upstairs, they might leave it there for that day, and they might leave it there forever, and they might just take it back and say, that's not, we leave the water where the food table is. It made no sense. You put the water where the men are, but to them, it made sense. Now, the bottom line on that job, so Mai paid, we're going to just say, Mai paid 3 million pesos to do the job. When the job was 1/3 done in September of 2019, I wanted to have the rooms, 16 small rooms, little whatever, like when you just rent a room to sleep in and you have a common bathroom, a hostel. I wanted to have 16 hostel rooms done by January 1st so that he could get to the tourist season of 2018, 2019. In September, I told Mike, they're not going to be done until April. No, the contractor assured me they'll be done by Christmas. I said, Mike, they're not going to be done until April. I don't know what you want to believe, but at this rate, they won't be done by April, and they're not going to make their budget. They're going to run out of money because of 11 men walking 250 feet and 2 flights of stairs to get a glass of water, and cutting plywood with a handsaw and mixing cement by hand instead of using the cement mixer because the cement mixer ran out of gas. You're going to run out of money at the 3/4 mark. The budget's going to be over budget. And in November, they ran out of money 2 months later. So Mai had to lay another 1 million pesos out of his pocket. So now the job cost 4 million pesos, not 3 million pesos. He had to let that crew go, hire another crew, and take 1 million pesos out of his pocket to get the job done. And then, of course, the job was done sometime in April of 2020, at which point no one has ever lived on the property because of the lockdown. So, to tell somebody something simple as move the water bottle to the job instead of walking 250 feet round trip, and them ignoring your advice, and him being a Filipino, because they don't work for him directly. They work for the contractor. And the contractor didn't have a problem with them walking to the water bottle, because when the contractor knew he was running out of money, he just told Mai, well, we went under budget. We're over budget. We're going to need another 1 million plus pesos to finish the job. At which point, Mai just let the guy go. He used up the money that was allotted for the job, and Mai screwed up by paying him all the money that he asked for when he asked for it, because he promised that the job would be done by Christmas, and in sometime early November, I gave him the balance, or most of the balance, and then the job never got finished. I don't know the exact numbers, but I will tell you that you have to be real careful doing business here in the Philippines. And if you think that the Filipinos are going to work under you or from your direction, you're mistaken. You're just mistaken. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to follow directions. They don't follow directions even from Mai, who's a Filipino, who owned the property, who owns the hostel, who hired the contractor. He couldn't even get them to move the water bottle on the job. And you think that's a reasonable way to do business? It's not. I wish I could show you the government job that I was talking about. The engineers for the government, I don't know. Well, I know what the solution would be. Before you put the stucco on, cut all the pipe 3 inches higher away from the brick. Put the stucco on and then paint the pipe down to the bottoms of the pipe. But now you can't paint inside the pipe at all ever, or the bottoms of the bottom edge where the water's going to drip. It's going to cause a drip at the bottom of the pipe. It's going to rust. You can never solve that problem now. But that's the Filipino way. I'm going to go back here, and I can't get in touch with my computer here, so I'm going to go back to see if there are any intelligent comments. And if there are not, I think I'll go outside and do some stuff. I have one more thing I could talk about. And Scott Del Fuego, the first comment, or a comment at the top of the page is, oh yeah, on my job, when the men smoked, 11 men, when they ran out of gasoline, Mai was in Manila, and Daisy and I were just taking a walk. Actually, we were walking to a friend's house and to visit somebody. And Mai's house is across the street from my friend's house, well, down the block a little bit, but there's no block, it's a road, a dirt road. Anyway, when they ran out of gasoline with the cement mixer, this is beyond understanding. There's no way to comprehend this from a first world construction mindset. So Daisy and I took a walk over to my friend's house, and the men were mixing cement 25, 30 feet away from the house. And they were mixing it next to the cement mixer. So I said to the foreman, how come you're not using the cement mixer? He said, there's no gasoline. Now, I said, well, I'll go get gasoline. No, sir. Why? Why can't I get gas? Sir, it's my cement mixer. Only Mai can put gasoline in the cement mixer. It's not gas and oil mix, it's just gas. So I called up Mai and said, I'll go get gas, but they don't want me to get gas. They said they won't put it in the cement mixer. Only you can put gasoline in the cement mixer. It's gasoline. It's not gas and oil mix. And Mai from Manila said, Mike, don't get the gas. I'll get gas when I come back from Manila, like 10 days away. So for 10 days, they mixed cement on grass next to a brand new cement mixer that could mix the cement 50 times faster than by hand. They mixed it by hand, which is why the job went over budget. Now, Scott Del Fuego brings up a good point. The men, when they had a cigarette and they smoked all day, would stop working while they had their cigarette. That was somehow incorporated in the benefits or the perks of being a worker on that job. When you smoked a cigarette, you could stop working. And when they lit up a cigarette, they'd stop working and they would just watch everybody else work. And when they put their cigarette out, they'd go back to work. And whoever lit up a cigarette, however many cigarettes there were during the course of the day, that's how much work did not get done. 6 or 7 minutes for every cigarette, times 11 men, 70 minutes an hour, 10 hours a day, 700 minutes a day lost work. I will not have anybody on my job that smokes cigarettes or drinks alcohol even after work. So thanks for bringing up that point, Scott. And oh, I saw that happen too, Jerry. Well, I don't think I can hire Chinese workers, but I saw materials on the house that's across the street from me. I saw materials every day going. The men were taking when the when the cocoa lumber, at that time there was cocoa lumber, was delivered to the job, they were taking, at the end of the day, each man would walk home with a piece of cocoa lumber, like an 8 or 10 foot piece or a 5 foot piece. And every worker would take home one piece of lumber every day. But at night, because Daisy and I were living in the hotel next door, at night, a few of them would come back and come back for more. Now, what were they using the cocoa lumber for? The new cocoa lumber that the owner of the house was building the house, the cocoa lumber was not being used to build anything per se, but it was being used for firewood. So brand new lumber delivered to the job, so they didn't have to go collect firewood off the beach. They would just take one piece of 2x3 or 2x4 home and use that for firewood for that night or next morning. So they were literally burning the materials. And in regards to the sand, they were taking home bags of concrete sand, and then they were going to the beach and using beach sand to do stucco work with, because they were using the concrete sand at their house, and the beach sand is what they used to replace the beach sand that they took for their house to do the stucco work with. And you're not supposed to use beach sand for cement work, because the granular construction of beach sand is not granular, it's circular. It's all like round pieces. It has no adhesive content, no gripping content. There's a reason that you don't use beach sand. You could, and you wouldn't notice it for years to come, but eventually it's not as strong. Scott Del Fuego, again, and Scott says if I decided to hire Filipinos, they can't smoke on the job. Not going to get that. That's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. They're going to smoke on the job. You tell them you can't smoke on the job, they're going to smoke on the job. So if they smoke, they're going to smoke. So they can't work. They wouldn't be. But I can't hire them anyway, because if I hire them, then I can't be on the job. Theoretically, unless I work my Filipino citizenship into the deal, and then I could work with them, I think, but I never looked into it, because I don't plan on hiring Filipinos to do the work. I'll rather do the work myself. I like working. So, yeah, it's not going to work out well if I were to hire a Filipino and they didn't listen. Yesterday, I could tell you a story about yesterday. True story. I could show it to you. I'll show it to you in my next live stream. Some Filipinos were hired to clear some trees away from some wires in the back of the property, the wires that go to other properties. So some trees grew up, and the trees grew up and all around, and they surrounded the wires. Actually, the trees, by growing up underneath the wires, which have been there for 6 years, 7 years now, they actually are holding up the wires. They weren't dragging the wires down. Instead of clearing the center out of the trees, like they do in most of America, you'll see like a tree cut like a V shaped out of it, and the wires are clear shot through the tree. They cut the trees down. They just cut the whole tree down. And then, now the wires have nothing holding them up. Now the wires are sagging 1.5 feet lower than they were, with the trees holding up the weight of the wire. And the wire weighs a lot. There's like 8 or 10 wires, and each wire weighs 50 pounds or whatever it is. So it's putting more pressure on the pole. They just cut the trees down. instead of just trimming the trees. And this was a crew that came to cut, that clears the trees around wires. This is the crew that was meant to do that. They just cut the whole tree down without permission from the owner of the property. They just cut the whole tree down. And what did they do with the tree? They just cut it down and threw it on the ground. They didn't even take it out to the street for firewood. Somebody else came along later on and dragged all that stuff out, the whole tree out to the street, and they used it for firewood. But the tree that came to trim, to hollow out the tree, just cut the whole tree down without permission from the owner of the property or anything. Now, I don't care. It's not my tree. But I'm just saying that the only thing I ever said to those guys was good morning, because I didn't really care what they were doing. It's not my property. It's not my business. But I'm just letting you know that instead of hollowing out the tree, a crew that does this for a living just cut down 3 or 4 trees. And some of the trees were 10 feet away from where any wire would ever be, even 10 years in the future. They were just cutting trees down. So they were charging him by the hour, apparently. Whatever. There was no reason to do it the way they did it, but they did it like that. And for me, they did me a favor, because when I moved my cargo can 1, I'm going to have to cut that 1 or 2 of those trees down anyway. They're in my way. So they actually did me a favor by cutting down 2 of the trees where I would have had to contact the owner, who lives in Australia, to ask him permission to cut the tree down. So they just cut the tree down without permission and doing me a favor. Do I care that they cut the tree down? No. But did they ask permission to cut the tree down? No. Do I care that they cut the tree down? Heck no. They did me a favor. They saved me hours of chopping. And how did they cut down 6-inch thick, 7-inch thick trees? Cut it down with a bolo. Did they have a chainsaw? No. They had a pole saw that was dull, that the guy was sawing and sawing and sawing and sawing and sawing, like 10 minutes to cut a 2-inch branch. It was a dull pole saw. That's the Filipino way. Let me read these comments. Yeah, I guess, I don't know how. I know a manager of a 5-star hotel in Boracay, says Jerry Cantrell, and all of the construction staff were brought in from Singapore and China. I've watched Chinese people work. They are phenomenal workers. But I think you'd have to be a Chinese partnership. I don't know how that works. I saw them, the Chinese, 21 Chinese men build a 4-story structure in a year that 200 Filipinos couldn't build in 3 years. No. Similar crime. Time completion bonuses for contractors. I don't know anything about that. I never talked to a contractor here. I only talked to one contractor, and I'll never talk to another contractor again. So, Frank from Flywoods, thanks for stopping by. So, time completion bonuses for contractors in the Philippines are non-existent. And Flywood says, yes, they're non-existent. Or they don't care. And yes, they don't care. If it runs over budget, that's the foreigner's problem. So Flywoods has maybe some history working with Filipinos. I don't, and I never will. I will not hire a crew that I can't be in control of. I'd rather work by myself. I got nothing else to do. It's not like I have I have a time frame for this. Similar crime. The common explanation. Okay, Flywoods, Frank of Ruby Galar's channel says the common explanation to unfinished project is no more money in the budget. And that's what happened to mine. That is what happened to mine. The budget went over budget, and mine didn't have any more money for not to hire a contractor. He eventually paid an extra million or so pesos out of his pocket to finish the building, and then about 6 months ago, the perimeter wall was finished. I don't know. I think my had the money to give the contractor, but just refused to hire the contractor that didn't finish the budget on time. And what would make that's ridiculous. I mean, the contractor left the job with no bathrooms, no kitchens, and some windows, but not stuccoed. The inside walls weren't stuccoed. The contractor left the job long before it was finished. So basically, the last million pesos was 33% more than the original cost of the job just to get the building finished. So I don't really I never saw the contracts, but it's just what Maya and I talked with over dinner. And if I was going to hire a contractor, Maya's a licensed architect, I would hire him to run my job, but I probably won't do that. So you guys, thanks for your input, and I don't know anything about, all I know is one example. Maya ran out of money when the guy promised him he'd have it done before Christmas. He gave him money, and by the end of November, the guy ran out of money and said, I need an extra 30%. If you saw how the job was going, I saw how it was going in September, and I said, no, they're not gonna finish the job until April. So eventually the job got finished in April, and by that time the lockdown was in full effect. So he never rented out even one room, to my knowledge, till to this day. So that's just the way it is here. So I'm going to say thanks for watching, and I'll show you. I'm going to go up on the roof and show you that the trees that they cut down from the roof. When I go up there, I have to finish stacking the door jamb and window jamb lumber. It's not raining. It didn't rain. It says it's going to rain all day today, but it didn't rain. Just drizzled this morning early. And I'll show you the trees they cut down. Now, what are they? They're not hardwood trees. They're not even, any good trees. They're basically junk trees. That's not the point. The point is that two Filipinos went on somebody else's property without permission and just started taking trees down. That's the point. And they did me a favor, so I'm not upset about that at all. I would have had to take the trees down, and maybe if I took the trees down, the owner of the property would say, what did you do? Those were my trees. So now I don't have that problem. And they are going to be in the way of the back of my building anyway. So I doubt that there would be a problem. The guy lives in Australia, but try to get in touch with him. The people that represent the guy in Australia, I'll leave him a message. I called them up. I gave them my email address in person. I gave them my phone number in person. I gave them the reason I wanted to talk to the owner in person on a piece of paper with my name and email address in it 2 years ago. And then the woman who I gave it to was the niece of the Filipino woman and man and the Australian man that live in Australia, and no one ever got back to me. So when I called the woman again, she goes, yes, sir, I left them a message. Can you leave them another message? Yes, sir. And I don't know if she did or didn't. I don't care. What I did was I took another piece of property over, which doesn't have anything to do with that property. So now I don't need that property anymore. But did they ever get in touch with me? No. I don't know why. I have no idea why they didn't follow up with the information I gave them, and I don't care. I just took a different piece of property over. So this is what it's like living here in the Philippines. I mean, I had a legitimate reason to take that property for myself to do something I wanted to do on that property, but they never got back to me. And the reason they didn't get back to me, I don't know. So soon afterwards, after I tried to get in touch with the owner, the property went up for sale at a ridiculous price. Now, I don't know. They never offered the property to me, but for me, it was a ridiculous price. The property has no real value. Not yet. But in a few years, if they ever open up the Philippines, the property will have value. But as is, 7 years ago, the property could have been bought for about 15. That property was bought for 50. That property could have been bought for somewhere around $40,000 7 years ago. Now they want $120,000 for the property, and there are people coming by and taking pictures every day of the property. And when I happen to see them, it's right next door. I say, "Are you going to buy?" "Yes, sir, we're going to buy the property." Like they're going to buy it, and they don't buy it. So it's over a year now, year and a half, no one bought the property, because in this lockdown, the property has no value. Because could they build there? Yeah, they can build there, and they could put quite a few rooms on the property too, for hotels. But construction is at a dead standstill here. Jobs that started 3 years ago still don't have windows in the jobs. 3 of the 5 junkyards in Tagbilaran City were closed down because there are no scrap metal sales for anything of any value. The other 2 that are open, one doesn't do scrap metal anymore. They just do bottles and aluminum. They don't take metal. They only take aluminum, aluminum roofs, aluminum frames. They didn't take metal. So nothing has any real value anymore. So people say, "When are you going to do what do you care when I'm going to do my hotel?" When I do it, I do it. When I go out there and feel like working, I work. When I don't feel like working, I don't work. When it's raining, sometimes I work, sometimes I don't work. But it's none of anybody's business how long it takes me to do what I do, even if I only have 15 years left on the lease when I'm halfway through with the building. So what? I still get to live in a building till I'm 80 years old. And at that point, I'll probably end up renting an apartment from the building or moving someplace else. What will I care? I'll be 80 years old. What will I care? What do you care? What does anybody care? How long it takes me to do something. I can do more work at my age than any other man my age that I know, and I do, because I don't follow your directions or your beliefs of how I get work done. It's none of your business what I get done during the course of a day, or what you don't see me get done during the course of a day. I spent 3 hours this morning to get a price for cable slings. 3 hours. And then, did I get a price? Yeah, I did. I'll show it to you. But it took 3 hours to get this price. And did I get a price? No, I got a price, and I didn't get a price. 3 hours. Yesterday and today. 3 hours. Here is cable slings. I'm going to open up this attachment. And the guy who I dealt business with, he actually got back to me in less than an hour. I want to open this up and not show you. Okay, so here's my price quote on December 3rd. Now, this took 3 hours. It wasn't 3 hours this morning. It was an hour and a half this morning and an hour and a half yesterday. Okay. Dear Mr. Michael Fazio, Panglao Bahal, December 3rd, 2021. Sir. And then it goes on, but this took 3 hours to do. And 2 other companies that I contacted did not respond, even though I sent them emails. So, this isn't what I asked for exactly, but it gives me an idea of what they want. So, wire rope slings to pick up the cargo containers, 5/8, made of blue strand wire rope, which is okay for me. 3-ton vertical lift, and the IWRC is just a code for the type of sling it is. Ungalvanized cable coat, lubrication with a thimble eye on both ends. Now that's important. The thimble eye on both ends. $160. But is it the quote I asked for? Not exactly. I wanted the 3-ton part of the cable quote is within the parameters of what I asked for. I actually wanted 4 tons, but he gave me a price for 3 tons. That's okay. It'll work. 3 tons is more than enough, actually. But what I asked for was a price with shipping. You see a price here for shipping? No. So I called him back on this. Hold on, let me make sure. I don't want my email address in there. Prepaid times prepaid. Okay, my email address is not on there. So the shipping part of the shipping part is even more complicated than getting the wire rope or the slings. Why is it more complicated? I don't know. So, delivery. Approximately 3 to 5 working days after receipt of firm order. That means after you pay for this order, the delivery will be 3 to 5 working days. However, they will not ship it to the factory in Cebu, where this factory is located. They will ship it to me directly. And I don't know what the shipping will be until it gets to my house. So the slings, I've had them charge me $10 for 2 kilos of product. These rope slings will be closer to, excuse me. For my cables, for my welder, it was $40 for delivery. And they only weighed 15 kilos. These will weigh a little bit more than 15 kilos, I think, somewhere around there. But they're going to get shipped from Manila. It's a special delivery because of the way it packaged. That's what he told me on the phone. However, so it could cost me another, no, it's going to cost 40 or 50. That was a year ago, the shipping. Could be 50, 60, $70 more, but he could not give me a price for shipping. So the shipping is whatever the shipper wants when it gets to your house. So it could be $70, could be $80 for shipping. I don't know. Probably wouldn't be, but they won't give me a price for shipping. So I won't order the cable. It's not complicated. Now, could I have them deliver the cable slings to Cebu? Yeah, but I still have to pay in advance for the slings. with no guarantee when they're going to get here. So when he says allow 3 to 7 days, probably it'll be 3 to 7 days. But what if it's 3 to 5 weeks? What if they close for the holidays? What if their swage machine broke, or they couldn't get a part for the swaging machine, whatever? I might pay for these things and not get them till after the holidays. The truck to pick up the container is only going to be here until December 15th. So I could buy the slings, and then the truck that's going to pick the container up won't be able to pick the container up, and then I'll have 2 slings. Whereas if I hire another company, boom truck, to pick the container up, they may have the slings, and then I won't even need my slings. I'll use their slings. This is doing business in the Philippines. So I said to him, why don't you just have the slings delivered to your door? And he said, we could do that, but I still have to pay for the slings in advance with no guaranteed delivery date. So there's no bonus if they get it on time, or it takes them 2 months to get the slings. There's no incentive once you give them the money to get the slings to their business or me. That's just no way to do business. In America, I call up, I think it was New York Slings. They were located in Long Island, New York Slings. At 7:30 in the morning, I talked to the manager. The manager says, come in and pick them up at 11 o'clock, and everything was done. Cable clamps, if I needed clamps, slings with thimbles, slings with no thimbles, chain, whatever, nylon slings, 18,000 pounds, 26 feet long. Everything is done in a box, sitting on a shelf, waiting for me to get there. No deposit. Well, they knew me, but that's not the point. The point is, I could just go pick the stuff up in an hour. This way, to go to Cebu is all day to go to Cebu and back, and $2,040 for transportation, and no guarantee. If I went there to give them the money, I'm not giving them my credit card number. So I got to go there to give them money. So that's going to cost me 2,000 pesos, $40 to go give him money, and then $40 to go pick up the slings. That's $80 more. Or $80 for shipping. Either way, that's not a good way to do business. And that's how you do business here in the Philippines. That guy will tell me, we'll have it in 3 to 7 days. Do I believe that? Sounds like a reasonable amount of time. Hold on a minute. But I don't think it's going to happen in that amount of time. Guapo! Yo! Hold on a minute. Guapo! Barrios! Oh, right, come, Paliho! Banana.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
I have more.
I will make it first dry to the sun. Make it
What?
exposed to the sun to make it dry. Because it's not
Yeah,
good
well,
fun.
I'm not going to clean it up for you. You clean it up.
Yeah, of course.
Okay? Here.
Okay, this is two stock. Okay. And the other one.
Okay?
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, you're welcome. See you later, Ray.
Yeah, have a nice day.
I have more in the back. I'll give you later. Okay, bye-bye. That's the trees that they cut down yesterday. I just gave them some of the bigger branches that the men did not take off the job. They left it just laying on, well, those were the branches that they threw on my property. Not that I care that they threw branches on my property, because I give it to my landlord for firewood. But I just gave my neighbor a branch that thick and 14 feet long and then 2 more about this thick and 6 feet long, and then I have a whole box that I cut up with the chainsaw that weighs about 50 pounds, but he couldn't take it all at once. So when they chopped the tree down yesterday, if the tree fell on my property, they left it there. If the tree fell in the lot, they left it there. And not that I care, because I give it to my landlord. That's not the point. The point is they didn't ask to cut the trees down from my neighbor, and they didn't ask if they could leave the junk on my property. But when they cut it, it fell on my property, and they didn't ask me if they could come and clean it up, which I would have let them, but that's not the point. The point is they just don't care. They don't even know that I'm a foreigner. These men don't know that I was a foreigner. They just didn't care that they left it on somebody else's property. They just don't care. They don't have that ability to think that far ahead. They don't care. They left the wood on somebody else's property. No big deal. You clean it up. I'll make the mess. You clean it up. That's what they did. So with these cable slings, when the guy says it'll be 3 to 7 days, should it be 3 to 7 days? Probably. Probably that's a reasonable time to get something from Manila to here, but it could be 3 to 5 weeks. And there's no guarantee. I will just go to Build-A-Ware, and the next time I do a live stream, you'll probably see the chain that I'm going to buy. Because buying chain is, although I didn't want to spend $3.76 per foot, I'm gonna spend $3.76 per foot for the chain. I'll buy 5-foot pieces. I'll pay roughly $20 per piece. I'll buy 4 pieces. I'll spend $80. I'll buy 3 chain hooks, because I already have 1 chain hook for number 10 millimeter chain, and I'll build, instead of using slings, I'll build my lifting chains. I'll use lifting chains instead of lifting cable slings, and I'll be able to use the chains for other things. Of course, I could use the slings for other things as well, but I don't know when I'm going to get the slings or how much. So the slings would cost $160 plus, say, $50 for shipping. The slings could cost $210 with no guaranteed date. Then the truck that's going to lift the containers up will be leaving the hall by December 15th. Doesn't leave me much time. Therefore, if I buy 4 chains, I'll spend $20 per chain and maybe $5 a hook. So I'll spend $100 or less for the 4 chains, the 3 hooks, because I already have 1 hook. And then, or I could use bolts. That's easy enough. I have the bolts. I may not use the hooks, because hooks can fall apart. When you bolt the chain together, it doesn't fall apart. However, the point is, it'll cost me $80 or $100 rather than $200, but I will know I have the chains in my possession the next time I go to the city. The other way, I could give him $200 and not have what I want for a month, and that would be holidays. The holidays, and the area was closed, and people didn't show up for the holiday. The holidays are a month away, 3 weeks away, but it could interfere in any way, shape, or form. If it's not the holidays, it's the virus. The problem, you didn't get it because of the virus. You didn't get it because of it's the lockdown. The lockdown. They have a million excuses here, none of which are real, but all of which could be valid on any given day. That's what it's like doing business in the Philippines and hiring people in the Philippines. So, and the guy definitely gave me a price in the hour time frame that he said he was going to give me the price for the slings, but he could not tell me how long it would take to get delivered. 3 to 5 days is reasonable, like I said, but I doubt it. I've never gotten anything from Manila in less than 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, the truck that's going to pick up the cargo containers will be gone. So it's probably not going to happen. Okay? Yeah, that's right. Paradoxical Q. Boy, you've been with me for a long time. Yeah, the Filipinos. I could tell you that story again, too. Now it's drizzling out. 500 cement blocks came. And the truck that came with the 500 cement blocks was to build the 3rd and 4th floor of the hotel next door. Well, you know, the 3rd floor. First you build the 3rd floor, then you build the 4th floor. And 2 men on the truck and 2 men on the ground that were part of the hotel project, they backed the truck up and put the truck directly in front of my gate. Why? Well, because directly in front of my gate was underneath where they had the pulley to pick the cement blocks up. But they blocked me from getting on my property with a truck. So I told the men, this is before they even put 1 block down. I was living in the house next door, the apartment building next door. I was on the balcony when the truck came. Me and Daisy were up on the balcony. I said, don't put the cement blocks there. And they started unloading the cement blocks right in front of my gate, which won't allow me to bring a truck on and off the property to put fill on the property. And I said, don't put the cement blocks there. It's blocking my gate. And they kept loading the cement blocks. Now, they all spoke. The 2 guys, part of the hotel project, they spoke enough English to know don't put the cement blocks there. And Daisy told them in their own language, don't put the cement blocks there. And they kept loading the cement blocks. And I said, don't put the cement blocks there. Do you not understand? They understood. They just were going to put the cement blocks there so they could save a few steps of not walking it over to the pulleys or to the what we call a wagon wheel, but it was just a pulley this big. And I said, well, you know, if you put the blocks there, I'm just going to make you move them. They kept putting they put 500 blocks in front of my gate, right in front of the gate that opened up and closed. So I called the owner, but they didn't answer the phone. And then I called the owner a few hours later when the cement blocks were done by that time. And I told him, the cement blocks are in front of my gate. I can't get in and out. So they had to move 500 cement blocks over 10 feet. That's twice the work. That's good for them, bad for the owner. And not only that, but when they went to put the cement blocks up and down onto the roof, 2 men from 8 o'clock in the morning till lunchtime brought up 6 cement blocks to the 3rd floor. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 cement blocks in the morning and 6 cement blocks in the afternoon. 2 men with a wagon wheel. Daisy and I could bring up 250 cement blocks in one day. About 3 or 4 weeks later, the owner came. He had no idea what was going on, that the cement blocks were still on the ground. And he looked and he said, what the hell is going on here? There were 175 blocks left 3 weeks later. And that's all these 2 men did all day, was bring cement blocks up to the 3rd floor. So when he found out what was going on, and I told him, I said, look, they've been moving these cement blocks for 3 weeks. And he goes, 3 weeks? I said, yeah, every day they move up 12 blocks to this 3rd floor. He went sideways, and he got his son and those 2 men. And I have video of this, but I don't put it on YouTube. I don't even put it on my Patreon page. In an hour and a half or less, they moved 175 blocks up to the 3rd floor. in an hour and a half. 4 men. The owner, his son, and the 2 men that were moving 12 blocks up to the 3rd floor per day. 12 blocks per day. You could literally walk. 2 men could walk 50 blocks up and down the stairs to the 3rd floor in one day. Easy 50 blocks. But they were moving 12 blocks in a whole day with a wagon wheel and 2 men, one on the 3rd floor, one on the ground floor. 1 block at a time. So basically it was taking 45 minutes per block to go up to the 3rd floor. And no one cared. And me, I didn't care. It wasn't my job. But when the owner came and asked what was going on, and I told him, he went sideways, because that's a ridiculous amount of time. Even if you're dogging the job, that's a ridiculous amount of time. So, but that's the way it is here. That's just the way it is here. So that's why Mai lost his shirt on that job. He lost 1 million pesos on that one part of the job and had to finish it himself. That's why the government job that put the fence up is going to have to redo the whole fence, well, most of the fence job, in 2 or 3 years, 4 years. So I got to get outside now. Now I have explained to you everything you need to know about working in the Philippines. Now, does that mean there won't be more lessons? No, there will be. There'll be more lessons. But when I get the and I went to order the rebar bender again today. That was part of my morning project. Again, I ordered the rebar bender. And again, I sent out an email. And again, I spoke with Lazada. And again, I couldn't get in touch with the company that had the rebar bender. And again, now, to deliver the rebar bender went from free shipping to 28,000 pesos, but Lazada isn't sure if that 28,000 pesos gets the rebar bender from Manila to Bohol, and there's another 28,000 pesos when it gets to Bohol to deliver it to my house 10 more miles. I'll show you that right now. So I also tried to get that today. Now, none of this is going to make sense. None of it's going to make sense. It's not going to make sense. I'm going to highlight, and this is what it's like doing business here in the Philippines. Okay, so I'm going to take this link. I'm going to cut the link out so you could see this for yourself. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to put the link in the description box here, if it fits. It doesn't fit. Okay, it's 246 characters. It won't fit. Okay, well, I'm going back to the link. Okay, so here it is. Here's the Toyoyama 32 millimeter steel bender. What does it say there? What does that say? What does that say? Does that say 115,000 pesos? What does that say? 115.5, yeah? And what does this say? Standard delivery, 28,000 pesos. 115. Standard delivery, $600, that is. Okay? So would that be agreeable? Well, I don't really have an option. So I called up Lazada. It gets better. Now, if you scroll down here, and you got to scroll down. By now, We don't want to push that just yet. But I would buy it now for 115, and I'd even pay the 28,000 pesos. However, scroll it down a little bit. And we have the Yamato Toyoyama 32 millimeter, the bender in question. That's the same bender. Look, see the picture of this bender here with the doodads on it? Go up here. You can clearly see it's the same bender. Semi-automatic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons and switches and an on-off switch. Okay, let's scroll it down here. Now, what does that say? What did that price? That price was 115,000 pesos, yeah? Scroll it down. Now, that machine, same machine, is now 128,000 pesos. So it just jumped up $300. The price is now 128,000 pesos plus the shipping of 28,000 pesos or 166,000 pesos, $3,300. Is that acceptable? Yeah, it would be. I would have bought it. However, it doesn't tell you standard delivery does not mean it's going to come to your front door. Standard delivery now means it's from Manila to Bohol. And then you have to hire Alpha Bravo delivery service for an additional $600 to bring it the last 10 miles. So when I called up Lazada, their operator can't confirm what standard delivery means. So now this machine just went from $2,300 to $2,900 with the standard delivery and $3,500 with the second leg of the delivery. So now it's no longer 115,000 or 2,300. Now it's 2,500, almost double. Just shy of double. Well, no, excuse me. 115 and then add one, 115 is 2,300 and add $1,200 to that. So add 50% more. Only for shipping, 50% more. That's ridiculous. The price used to be 10,000 pesos, $200 to ship it. But somebody got a bug up their nose to put standard delivery at 28,000 pesos, and now everybody's using the 28,000 peso mark for shipping. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely absurd. But there's no way of confirming that this shipping is door to door. No way. And the last time I tried to confirm what the shipping was, they said door to door, but then when I ordered the machine and paid for it with my credit card, it was door to port, and then another $600 from port to my door. I'm not going to pay $600 to bring this tiny little machine 10 miles. So I didn't buy the machine. Now, I've tried to get in touch with this company, Genda, trading in Manila. I've chatted with them. I've asked them questions. Here are my questions on the bottom here. These are my questions. Is this 220 volt single phase? When did I ask that question? On November 2nd, 1 month and 1 day ago, 31 days ago, I asked this question. And no one ever responded. No answer yet. So how can I buy a machine if I don't know what the electrical configuration is for the motor? So they never responded. So I called up this company using the phone number I got off the internet, Jenga, and their phone, no one answers the phone. So would I have bought it again this morning? Yes. Do I need it? Yes. Will I pay $1,200 for shipping from Manila to here when last year shipping from door to door was $200? So they increased the price of the shipping from $200 to $1,200. They added $1,000 for shipping in 1 year. I won't pay it. It's just that simple. I'll wait until after I do my thing on January 10th or before about relinquishing whatever little honor one particular blogger has, and I will prove that there is no honor in that blogger's blogs. And then I'll wait till after January 10th. If I have to, I'll go directly to Manila. If the lockdowns end and I don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops, I'll go directly to Manila and buy the machine, put it on a truck, bring it to the port, jump on the ship with the machine. When the ship gets to Tagbilaran, I'll hire a truck at the dock. They'll put the machine on the dock, and I'll have a truck ready. I'll just call up my trucking service, and I'll have them bring their truck, and there's a forklift on the dock, and I'll have the forklift guy put the machine on the truck. But I refuse to pay. There is nobody that will confirm it's only $600. When last year it was $200, port from their warehouse to my house, it was $200. Now it's $1,200. Or Lazada can't tell me how much it is. I'm not gonna. That just leaves it open-ended. And everything that you do in the Philippines that's open-ended is what they call the owner. The burden is on the shoulder of the buyer. That means anything they want to charge when they get it to your house is what you have to pay to get it off the truck. That is total bad business. And that's the end of my show. That is total bad business. That is no way to try to generate business. And that is the only machine that's available in the Philippines today, or yesterday, or the day before. And that's the way they want to do business. Nobody answers the phone. Nobody answers the emails. Lazada can't give you a firm answer. And I already bought that machine once under those circumstances when the delivery was not 28,000 pesos. The delivery was free 6 weeks ago. Then it was free plus $600 when it comes to my house. There's no way to know what you're paying for shipping, even though you're buying it from Lazada. And once the order goes through, you're going to see a confirmation. We have removed the funds from your debit card, blah, blah, blah. You have until the order is processed to cancel the order, after which the order is not cancelable. You cannot cancel the order after the order is processed. So all within 5 minutes of my first purchase of this machine, a company called me up and said it's an additional $600 to go the last 10 miles. I'm not doing business like that. For $1,200, I'll go to Manila and blog Manila for a couple of days. And then I will also buy something else that I want to buy in Manila. But I will not be at the beck and call of some ignorant trucking company that is just raping the price of a delivery service. I'm not going to be on the butt end of that deal. It's just not going to happen. There is no reason for that delivery to go from $200 last year to $1,200 this year. There is no justification. Not the price of fuel, not the price of a truck, not the price of insurance, not the price of labor. For it to go up 6 times, there's no justification for that increase in price. But that's what it's like doing business here in the Philippines. And I got to go. Yeah, I got it. Go to a college and Chinese student who takes Western studies. Yeah, thanks for the advice. I never thought about that, but it probably wouldn't work out well. But thank you for trying to help me out with where to find labor. But again, to the person who sent me that information, I still have to insure these people. So they have to have a Filipino work permit to work here in the Philippines. The Chinese workers that you suggest I hire, I still have to have a contractor that hires the Chinese people that can pay their insurance through their contracting company. But I got it. Thank you for that piece of information. I can't work around the insurance, and I don't think I could work around hiring a Filipino contractor to hire the Chinese workers. And then there has to be a lot of paperwork to hire a Chinese national to work in the Philippines. It's not just like you hire somebody. You have to pay 40% of their salary to the Philippines, and so much per worker, per month, or per job, and they can only work for 6 months. I never tried to do it, but the guy up the block did it and told me how complicated it was. So that's a good idea, but if you're going to insure them, they have to have a work permit, and that costs you 40% of their salary, I think it was, that you have to pay directly to the Philippines government, and you have to have a reason to hire the Chinese workers. So if a Chinese worker was going to come, if you wanted to hire a Chinese man that does 2 or 3 times the work of a Filipino worker, you could do that. But you have to have a reason to hire the Chinese man. Now, a reason would be the Chinese man can do a job that a Filipino man can't do. Well, any Filipino can do concrete work, according to Filipinos. So that wouldn't be a good reason. Now, if there was a Chinese owner married to a Filipino, and the foreman of the job was Chinese, and the only Chinese was spoken, maybe, I don't know how they worked it out, the Chinese contractor. But he hired 21 Chinese men that did more work in a year than 200 Filipinos could do in 3 years. And everything that was done by a Filipino contractor prior to him starting to build the hotel up the block, all the foundations, all the footings, all the beam boxes, all the columns, all of it, millions and millions and millions of pesos that were done before the Chinese contractor got on the job was all ripped out. Everything was ripped out. All the columns, all the footings, all the beam boxes, everything was ripped out and thrown into a scrap pile. And they started from scratch because they were building everything at twice the codes, twice the column size, twice the rebar size. The pool everything was different. So you can't do that. You can't just hire Chinese people and say, I got Chinese people. You have to have a reason to hire Chinese people. It's expensive. You have to pay so much money to the Philippines government. It's not so easy. But thanks for the heads up on that. But it's just not possible. To the person that's trying to get in touch with me on Skype, I'll be done shortly. I'll get in touch back with you. For my live stream, I'm going to end that live stream. For my live stream, I'm going to end that live stream. Okay, we're going back to... Oh. Oh, yeah? No, that wouldn't work. No, that wouldn't work. What? I'm going to teach somebody 40 years of construction knowledge to how to buy equipment and tools. It wouldn't work. But thanks for the assistance. It wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. I'm not going to try to train somebody to do what I know how to do already. I don't care how long it takes me to do it. You have a lot of theories, my friend. It's actually, if it was a huge construction job and you had, what am I going to do? Teach somebody how to be a purchasing agent, or how to do this runaround? They're not going to follow my ways. I do things my way. I don't care how long it takes. This is the way my life has been. I got this far in life doing what I do best. And what I do best is control what's underneath me. So you can put all the theories, because I know you like theories. We know that you like theories. But thanks for your theories. You know what we should do, you and I? We should actually talk on the phone one day. Nah, he's typing. He's typing. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not training them slowly. I'm not training somebody to do what I know how to do. I'll just do it myself. How much money would I save by them trying to buy my rebar bender? After I have 200 hours to buy a rebar bender in, at the end of the day, they're going to just say, okay, we'll buy it at the price that they want. I'm not buying it at the price they want. I refuse to pay $1,200 to get that tiny little machine from Manila to here. I'll go pick it up myself. I'll pay half of that, and I'll get a trip to Manila. The trip to Manila, one-way ticket, is only 2,600 pesos to Manila. It's $50. I could get the whole thing done in 2 days, put it on the ship, and 2 days on the ship, and be back and have it and I could probably get the machine back here for $200 from the port. Instead of spending $1,200, for $400, I could go to Manila, blog Manila, buy the rest of the equipment I want in Manila, put the equipment on the ship, bring the equipment back on the ship to the port of Cebu, hire, and get my truck to come pick me up. Please stop with the ideas. Unless you want to pay for it. And then if you want to pay for that $300 a month for me to teach a Chinese guy, just give me a year in advance. Man, you want a trip with these ideas. Oh my God. I got to wonder if you're on hallucinogenics. I got to wonder if you're on hallucinogenics. Knowing me as you do, and then telling me to hire some young Chinese boy, 18 or 19 years old, to run my business, I think you are on the magic mushrooms. I think. LOL. He says LOL. I think you're on the mushrooms. I think. Anyway, we should talk, you and I. But I got to go. I tell you what, I'm going to end the live stream. And I'll look at the rest of your theories in a few minutes, in about 2 minutes. Plywood's just told you that bonuses for contractors are non-existent. A Chinese, I gotta go. I gotta go, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. This guy had a bunch of theories he was throwing at me. Going to cost me $300 a month. I'm going to train a young Chinese guy to do my job that I do. I'm going to teach the guy 40 years how to purchase stuff. And then when I'm going to talk to him and tell him what I want, it's going to take longer to teach him to tell him to do what I want than it's going to take for me to do what I want. All I have to do is agree to bend over and let them shove it into me for $1,200, and I could have the machine in 2 weeks. Bye-bye for now. I'm Big Permy from Mr. Congeniality himself. Remember, I'm the nicest guy I know. Come with my own references. And I'm Bing Permy from the Philippines, baby, which means take care always. That's right. I'm Bing. Bye-bye for now.